everybody. Welcome to Doug and Mark's first YouTube video where you can actually see our faces. I'm Mark, and
I'm Doug.
right, that's well choreographed. So that'll be the end of the. So this is Battlefield Banter. We've got the Battlefield Banter logo. Actually, we made a shirt. You can see that. You're welcome. Thank you. My artistic.
Yes, Mark
Uh,
was the driver there.
right, right. I think I did find that logo on the web, but shh, don't mention it. All right, so today we're going to talk about our top 10-ish favorite-ish games that we've played in 2024. So games that we've played in 2025 don't count, or even 2023 don't count. It's 2024, the top
Yep.
10. So first of all, I have a hard time remembering what I was playing just 2 months ago, but Doug really wanted to do this, and so this is Doug's at Doug's behest. Here we are doing our top 10.
I did really want to do it because I've been inspired by other folks out there, the Players Aid, Zilla Blitz, others that kind of get on screen and talk about their favorite games or their shelf of shame or what have you. And I think it gives viewers of the banter an opportunity in the comments section to list what their favorite games are and just gets a little bit more back and forth in the community. So
Right.
I thought it'd be fun. And it will give us an opportunity to show off our shirt.
Right, right. And the first comment, there'll be no prize, just bragging rights. But what map is that projected behind us? And I'm not telling you the game. The first comment wins bragging rights. All right.
That's good. And I'll tell you, it. I'm looking at the camera here, and this is an impressive map. Just incredible. Do you want to tell them a little bit of a story about it?
Well, my wife borrowed a map from one of my games. I won't tell you which one. A few years ago, and we're actually in my wife's domain at the moment. This is her sewing emporium. Behind this, there is a 24 needle high-end embroidery machine for her Irish dance dress business. But and she surprised me with this map below. It's got multiple colors, multiple thread types. It's got different terrain, the maps. You can't see, but the hexes are there. So it is a hex map. There's a clue for you.
Even
And
the hex numerology,
yes,
right?
yes,
I saw this a couple minutes ago, and I was like,
right, right.
wow,
And the little
I
dots,
want one.
and the little dots in the hexes. So there you go.
Well, that's a clue.
That's another clue. All right. So let's get this going.
Yeah, let's get it going. Why don't we start off with just a little bit of history because it's our first time on the banter live in front of all of our many subscribers. And one, why are we doing the banter, right? I would say we have fun doing it.
For the
We
money, right?
well, all
You
for the
promised
money,
me
yes.
you promised me money, but
Yeah, it's our attempt to have a little fun. Mark is newly retired. I'm a ways from retirement. Yeah, he's got a lot more time to game, and it's gonna kind of motivate me to play more games. And we figure Mark's a very accomplished player. I am not so much, but I love playing the games because they tie me to history and things like that. So we thought this would be fun. I started wargaming back in the late '70s. The very first war game that my parents bought for me, the old Avalon Hill Classic, Rise and Decline of the Third Reich. Probably one of the hardest games to learn on your own. My dad very patiently played with me a couple times, and we I conquered Berlin on
was
the.
he a gamer?
He was not a
Okay.
gamer, but he was my dad, so
Hmm.
he was like, "Okay, I'll play with
Well,
you."
my dad wouldn't play them.
Oh well, so I was the Allies, and I conquered Berlin on the first turn in the 1944 scenario. So clearly, we weren't playing it correctly, but nevertheless, I ended up playing by mail, snail mail, and I purchased a lot of Avalon Hill games that I would, play around with, like many of us out there do. And then when I went away to college, played a little bit in the Navy ROTC with some other guys, and then pretty much put them away and finally pulled them out again during the pandemic
Hmm.
and realized my adult sons who had all come home from college loved one of my games that's on my top 10 list. And it took off from there, discovered Vassal, quickly met Mark. But that's me. I'm kind of re engaged in the hobby now 5 years, right? Five
Hmm.
years ago,
Hmm.
we were a month or two away from the pandemic.
Right, right.
So, how'd
Five
you get
years, really?
started? It's been 5 years.
Wow, that's crazy. My first war game that I can recall, and it is my first war game, is a game called Combat, and it's not probably the one you're thinking of. It was for the British market, and it had I think General Brian Horrocks had some blurb on the back. He was driving
Market Garden, right?
Market
Yeah,
Garden,
the tank commander.
trying to get the guards armored across one road, and never fight the tank division across one road or something like that. But anyway, it was a funny game. It had stick-on plastic terrain that you would literally lick and stick on for hills and roads and other things, and then you had plastic pieces for the tanks and the assault guns. And I don't believe there was any infantry, and it was a fun game. That was my first introduction, and then I did start a subscription to Strategy and Tactics
Mm,
magazine in my youth, and I recall I did. I think the heyday there, Terrible Swift Sword. I remember that game. I had that out. That was lots of fun playing that, mostly only solo, and then even Wellington's Victory, the era of the monster games, four mapper, which took hours to because Terrible Swift Sword, it was easy setup because it was a meeting engagement with very few pieces, but Wellington's Victory took a day to set up, and then
wow.
so and then I dropped out of the genre of board gaming entirely until my stepson got me back into Euro games quite a while ago. And then one day I was in a game store and I had some money to spend, and I saw a game called Combat Commander, and the rest is history.
Was that so? That was the first game you bought, kind of as you got back into the hobby.
Hmm.
Wow,
I'd say so. Yeah.
that was a fortuitous purchase
Yeah.
because that's a
Moving
game.
back from Euro games back into wargaming.
Yeah,
Yes.
wow, because that's the game you introduced me to,
Right.
and I'm sure we're going to both talk about
Hmm.
it in our top 10 lists.
Right.
But
Right.
back, probably a little note to the viewers on how we met, as we're both there in the early months of the pandemic. I was discovering Vassal. I discovered another Command and Colors game, Napoleonics, and figured out there was an international tournament. I forget the gentleman who
Command and
ran it.
Colors Napoleonics.
Yeah, Command and Colors Napoleonics, and similar to Memoir 44, which I just learned and started to buy the content. And lo and behold, who got assigned to me as my first opponent in an international tournament, but a guy 10 miles away from me in Poway
With
in
the
an
same
international
birthday.
tournament with the same birthday. Exactly. We only differ by 2 years, but the same day.
Yes.
So that's
Yes. Also in the
and here
comments,
we are.
which one is the younger one in the comments?
Well, here I'll show you all my gray hair as well. I might add, this is a San Diego State hat. Don't be thrown off the track with the aquamarine colors. That's in honor of Native American Month that they do. A little different than your
Oh,
standard red.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and of
Very
course,
good.
whoops, my San Diego State logo on
There you
my
go.
shirt.
All right, let's kick this off.
All right, let's kick it off. Let's get right into it. Do you want to start, or you want me to
You can
start?
start,
All right, I will
and
start.
I'll poke fun at your choices.
Yeah, well, I've got a few honorable mention games. The first one, and I actually brought the game, is Battle Line. It's a
War
game.
game. War games.
I don't
Card
know if it's a
game.
war game, but it's a fun game that I introduced one of my sons to, and I can stuff it in my backpack if I'm going traveling with any of my sons. And we played it a couple times. I don't know how many of you out there have played it. It's kind of a classic. I enjoy it.
Knizia,
Um,
right? Isn't it?
uh,
Knizia?
it's
Yeah,
GMT
Reiner,
publisher.
the
Yeah,
designer.
I
Knizia,
think
yeah.
would this be considered a Euro game?
Yes.
Yes, it would. So Battle Line, and it was pretty cheap, and I bought it on a half price sale
It is a
for
very good game.
GMT.
It is a very good game. And it's got a war theme. Let's go with that. It's a
Yes.
line of hoplites and so forth, right, are facing off ancient times, and it's the first one to break through in 5 different spots on the
Yeah.
line,
Yeah.
or 3 different places for a breakthrough victory.
So you need a little bit of table space to play it because you've got to line up 9 slots, if you will. And I think they've got an expansion that's like a different theme.
It's the same game, just rebranded. I
Same
think
game
medieval or
reskinned.
something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. But
Yes.
a lot of fun. Other honorable mention games we play in my house. a lot of Rummy Cube, Code Names is a lot of
Yeah.
fun,
Oh.
and chess. Mark and I have actually played. We have this little chess app.
Okay, I'll let you talk about chess, but the other
Yes.
two, I think. That
They're fun. Just for those of you that are trying to get your spouses or children involved, they're not bad. But my final true war game, honorable mention, one Mark and I have played with some of our other area San Diego war gamers, Space Corps by John Butterfield, who we met recently last fall at GMT's weekend at the warehouse. This is a GMT game. A lot of fun. It's got an expansion or two, I think.
Ventures.
Ventures.
Hmm. There's
And
another one in the works, I think you mentioned.
oh, is
I
there?
think maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Oh, that I don't
We'll
know.
bleep that
Yeah,
out.
we'll delete that out.
Mhm.
But a lot of fun. It 3 phases that can get a little lengthy, but a lot of card play, kind
Mhm.
of a lot of strategy. It's a 4-player game, and it's also on Steam, I believe.
Right.
Is that right?
Um,
Or wait, no, that's Dune Imperium
no,
that's
this
on
isn't on
Steam.
Steam. No,
Not
no,
on Steam. My
no,
bad.
no.
I'm
Does have
sure
a
that's
does
the
have a good
first of many
does
mistakes.
have a good solo mode, as
Okay.
it's a John Butterworth
Butterfield.
field game.
You did that the other day. Called him Butterworth. Oh, that's funny.
But
Funny.
also not really a war game. It's more of a race game, I think. It's just you're just racing your opponent. There's
Yes.
no take that kind of. You can't go and conquer somebody else's base. You can actually, if I explore it, then somebody else can come and build a base there. So there is that take that approach. But it is you could say area control, but more of a race game than a war game, I
I
think.
would agree. And it's also a game, it's multiplayer, which often multiplayer games, you're kind of stabbing somebody in the back. And I would say there's not as much opportunity for that in Space Core as it is you race to a different spot. So it's you kind of get them from behind, but not quite like in some of the other multiplayer games that are out
All
there.
right. Talking of stabbing people in the back then in multiplayer games, I'm going to jump to this one, which I did play this year. Pericles by Mark Herman. The Peloponnesian War, Athens versus Sparta, and the Delian League or Delian League maybe for the Athenians, and I think the Peloponnesian. I forget the name of who's on the Spartan side, but very interesting game, very thematic, beautiful looking map. Um, so there is the picture of the map. Really nice looking map, and it's 4-player game at its best. There is a 2-player version, but 4 players, and so you've got 2 players and really 2 games. There's a diplomacy. It's kind of like part of the church, borrow some Churchill mechanics, but not. But it's very different from that game. So you've got the 2 players on the Athenian side will face off against each other in this negotiation phase to try and get their actions, so they can do more in the map phase. And if they fight too much, then they end up with no resource or few resources and few actions. And then on the other side, you've got the 2 Spartan kings doing the same kind of thing. So there's this push pull. You want to cooperate with your partner, but only one player wins. So at the end of the day, if you let your partner lead all the military expeditions and they win, he gets all the glory. And so at some point, you're going to decide, I think I'm just going to have to ostracise my buddy here. He's
That
no
kind of
longer my
sounds
buddy.
coin adjacent, right? Where you're
Mm,
partnered with someone, but only one of you
I
can
see what you're
win.
saying. I see what you're saying. Yes, yeah, that's true. It's true. At some point, you have to say it's one of these games. Like if you have a gamer set where you don't like turning on them and stabbing them in the back, then it's probably isn't for you. But if you do like stabbing people in the back, then this game is. I like this game. I'm not sure what that says about me, but a beautiful looking game. I will say, lot of simple mechanics in the rules. So it's a Mark Herman game. Some rules issues for sure, but on the good side, Mark Herman does support his games very well. So if you do, you can go to the Geek and get most things answered there. So great looking game, lots of fun, very different gameplay. This one. with the sort of two games in one.
I
Pericles.
had an opportunity to meet Mark Herman at the San Diego HistCon last November
Is he a
that was
nice guy?
held right here in San Diego. Very nice guy, kind
Yeah.
of a gentleman.
Hmm. He's a
Um,
history professor, I think,
is
isn't he?
he?
I think
Okay,
it's
I
yeah.
didn't know that.
Uh-huh.
I
I think
did
he is.
recently read his new book that
Mm.
was published by GMT. In
Mark
fact,
on Games or
Mark
something.
on Games or
Right.
something like that. A
Right.
pretty quick read. I meant to bring that over
Hmm.
last weekend when we played. But
Did he have a
speak.
section Mark on rule writing? Must get a proofreader.
I don't
Mark,
recall.
the chances of Mark Herman ever watching this video.
Very low, very low. But speaking of San Diego HistCon, I want to show all the viewers here my shirt. Um, this was this is an event, very well done event, by the way, by Mark's friend, and I'd say he was very friendly to me, Harold Buchanan, who we both hold in very high regard.
Yeah.
And in fact,
A leading light in the wargaming, historical gaming scene here in San Diego.
very much so. He kind of invented San Diego HistCon.
Hmm.
And when I attended last November, he sponsored for his game South China Sea. He also did
Oh,
Liberty or
not this
Death.
story again.
Yeah,
Did you? How did you do in the tournament, Doug? Tell me.
funny that you should ask, Mark. I had never played the game
Uh-huh.
before. It's a two-player
Really?
game,
Yes.
and so Mark sponsored a little tournament. And somehow I got paired up with a nice gentleman from Texas
Hmm.
who I don't think he had played the game either.
Okay.
I barely beat him, and so I advanced to the second round. Harold made a choice,
Let's
but
get
anyway, and then I beat a game designer in the second round.
a game designer. You mean the game designer, right?
No, I didn't beat Harold. I beat somebody else
Oh,
from
I
some other
see.
game,
I thought you
but
meant
a very
okay.
talented, very gracious individual.
Hmm.
And the funny thing was, Harold made available, I think there were 8 of us in the tournament. 2 people said, "We can't win. We play this game all the time. It's not fair to the newbies." So they weren't eligible. But nevertheless, he had a random drawing. I won that game, which was one of the expansions of Twilight Struggle.
Oh yes.
And then because I won the tournament, Harold awarded me Guest of Robin Hood,
Yeah.
which we just played
Jest.
Jest.
Yeah.
I pronounced it wrong. So either way, a plug for Harold, a plug for San Diego HistCon, and a plug for this
Jest of
game,
Robin
a
Hood.
Guest of Robin Hood. That was a fun game as well,
Lots of
kind of
hits.
coin adjacent.
Yeah. Very
But
nice.
South China Sea was also very fun. I got it entered on my desired list on Noble Knight Games, who's not sponsoring this channel, by the way.
Nobody
Um,
would sponsor this channel.
Nobody's going to sponsor this. That's why we need you to subscribe
We're
if you've
independent.
stumbled
That's
across.
why we can say anything
Yes,
we like
we can
because
say
we're not
anything
in
we like.
anybody's back pocket.
We're independent.
Whose
So
go is it?
that was my last honorable mention. Do you want to start with your number 10 and then I'll go with mine?
Oh, sure. Yes. So, I'm going to start with I I'm not sure I really have a like favorite games because well, I do have one or two. Number one, I suppose, will come up. Number two, but the others are just like they're very yeah, they're all good, right? And I'm not showing any games of the few games. I think you might know one of them uh, that I'm not that I'm not going to discuss here because that's a bit unfair. It's my personal view. I think it's fair to talk about games you like, but it's not really fair to trash games.
Oh, I would never trash a game. I
Yeah,
mean, I might say I don't like this or that,
right.
but I was brought up if you don't have anything good to say, keep your
There
trap
we go.
shut.
Right, right.
Right.
So this one here, 300
Good
Earth and
game.
Water by Nuts Publishing. First of all, did a really nice box, like mechanical, magnetic thing there. I like that. But it's a really nice game, very portable again if you're taking it on a trip. Very quick playing, small map. This is the similar to Pericles, but a little bit earlier, when Athens and Sparta were getting on a lot better, and they were fighting against the Persians and the Persian Empire. So one player plays the Persian Empire, one player plays the Greeks. And card-driven game with lots of choices. Build fleets, build armies. As the Persians, you want to build the bridge. If you build the bridge across build ships across the what was it called there?
Some body of water. I
Yes,
don't
yes.
remember
Then you
what.
got to defend it, and a quick playing, really nice build
Very quick
quality.
when I play Mark.
That's why I like it, because I can always beat Doug. No, that's not
And
true. That's not
you
true.
have, I've
That's
never
not true.
won. I think that's a great choice. It's a
Hmm.
very easy game to learn,
Hmm.
difficult to master,
Right.
right?
And this, I want to say, where did we play this online? It's
We
on
is it BGA?
Rally the Troops, somewhere like
It's
that.
Rally the
Rally
Troops.
the
I think it's
Troops.
Rally the Troops. And
Right.
I'm sorry if we get the two confused. They're both great
Right.
websites.
But there we go. That's that one. A very quick game. And then this one here, in the quick game thing, this is another one, 13 days, which is also quite a small footprint, and sort of, you could say Twilight Struggle, very light, if you like. But you have a few cards. It's you're going to be fighting over some objectives on which the player, your opponent, kind of knows what the he's got a 1 in 3 chance of guessing the objective correctly, and as if you have the same chance of guessing his objective or her objective, and you're fighting over both those objectives. Both objectives will score at the end of the round, and it's a 45 minutes play. It says here, two-player game again. Very, very nice little game, and the history. There's a very good historical booklet on the whole Cuban Missile Crisis. That's what this is about. I think I forgot to mention it. It's the Cuban Missile Crisis. So very good too. I would say entry level games. You could
Yeah.
you could probably introduce people to board gaming and war gaming with these games.
And 13 Days is a game we'll have to play in the near future. I about 2 months ago bought a used book on the Cuban Missile Crisis. So
Hmm.
I always like to be reading books of games I'm currently playing.
Hmm.
That's part of what it really attracted me to the
Right,
hobby.
and there is a site where you can play this online against live opponents, turn-based or real time. I'll post a link. It's not Rally the Troops or War Arena, but there's a good site where you can play
A
this.
third site.
There's another site, yes,
Oh
yeah,
wow. Okay.
but the name escapes me at the moment. But I'll post that in the comments.
We truly are in the what's the golden age of wargaming, right? Not only do you have
Yes,
all these great physical games that you can pull out, but we got all these technology driven
right.
options.
Always better playing face to face, and
I agree.
pushing the pieces around and looking at your opponent and looking at the cards and
Although I will say, the one exception to that is if you have a cat in the house.
yeah.
Unfortunately, my son's cat almost destroyed one of my maps the other day. We were playing Grand Prix, which is a fun little game. Harkens back to my old Avalon Hill Speed Circuit, but Grand Prix from GMT, a lot of fun, up to 11 players,
Hmm.
right? If you can gather that many people. We were taking a break. We had left our glasses of water next to the map, and the cat came up and knocked over one. And anyway, I've kind of, with some Elmer's glue and a lot of hair drying,
Right,
I think
right,
I've rescued the
right.
map. That's a story for another day. So,
Mm-hmm.
great couple of games. One that you reminded me, 13 Days, that I do want to play. So, I'll go to my number 10 on the list. Number 10 on the list. This is admittedly not one of Mark's favorite games, but it holds a special place in my heart because it's what rejuvenated my wargaming career and hobby. I had bought it probably 15 years ago now, threw it in the closet. I pulled it out and moved the pieces around and put it back. My kids were just way too young. But then, as I described earlier, in the pandemic, they're back in the house. I pulled the game out. They loved it. It's got little green army men and tanks and artillery, part of the Command and Color series. So you've got a series of flanks, right? 3 sections of the board. You got to have the right cards in your hand. Very simple die rolling. Very easy to learn. In fact, as the pandemic progressed and all of my neighbors were stuck in their houses, we started a wargaming night in my neighborhood. We'd all be masked up or whatever. I must have taught 10 non wargamers how to play Memoir 44.
Yeah, good intro game. I would say that about it.
Very
Right.
good intro game and lots of content. I spent way too much money pursuing all the content, especially the D-Day beaches. They've got 6 monster maps that are all pre-formatted. I hope one day at one of our local gaming stores to gather together 10 or 12 people to play that, but we'll see. That's been a dream of mine.
For
I
how
am a
many
dreamer.
years?
Yeah, for a while.
And
But
you can play this one on Board Game Arena.
you
You
can
can, yes.
absolutely, and you can even do it on your
A
phone.
lot of the scenarios.
You
Yep.
can, and I played them all. My
Mhm.
sons and I, once we found this was on Board Game of Arena, we started playing that. So,
Mhm.
my top 10 list. To just a quick note, how did I track it? I've got a little app. I think it's the BGG app. It's like a little green symbol on your phone, and it's got all the games listed. And as I buy a game, I add it, and then when I play games, I do it. So
You can log it.
you can log it.
Yeah.
And so I've logged all the games I've played, and my top 10 list doesn't match it exactly. And Mark and I will still play games back and forth using Dropbox. I will, because I usually do 3 or 4 turns a week. So I'll take credit. That's one time play. So some of my Dropbox games are a little higher number count than physical times we
Mm.
pull them out on the board. But either way. So Memoir 44 is my number 10.
All right. All right. So I'm not numbering these as I mentioned earlier, but this one here, Wilderness War, you can. I have this for many years, and I played it a few times. But then this year I played it a lot more because it is on Rally the Troops.
Mm.
www.rallythetroops.com is an excellent site if you haven't been there. Whole bunch of games, including this one, and rules enforced. No AI, but you have to find an opponent. But there are lots of opponents around for these games. So this one here, the French Indian War or 7 Years' War, I think, as the British would call it, the English would call it. It's around. You've got Wolfe, you've got General Wolfe, as I played down there, General Wolfe and General Montcalm duking it out in around about Montreal and Quebec and New York, and you've got the British with overwhelming numbers, but the leadership, apart from Wolfe, is a bit lacking. It's hard to get their generals moving, and the troops can only move if the generals move the troops. The French, much more heavily outgunned, but a much more flexible leadership. And so, very asymmetric. The French have to adopt a hit and run and a raiding strategy, whereas the British can just grind them down with, if they can catch them, with big battles and taking the major cities. I think the British actually win if they just, no matter what the situation is, if they auto win if they take Quebec City and Montreal, I believe. But all in all, very good game. I do find it, we'll say, hard to win as the French. So if you are playing this one, and uh, give the more experienced player the French side, because I think it'll be a better
Unknown
opportunity.
caller.
All right, unknown caller. So that's that. Wilderness War by the artwork's by Roger McGowan. Volko Runker, who he of the Coin series, I think, designed this one. So fairly old game, card driven, but really nice, really good historical feel. And it's I have quite a few games in this particular era, but this one's the one I've played the most this year, solely due to Rally the Troops.
And I think Roger McGowan, he's the one that does the C3I magazine, right?
He
And
does, yes.
recently lost his house in the
Lost his home,
Palisades
yeah,
fire. Horrible
tragically.
tragedy.
Right.
I think there's a one of those fundraising
Yes,
sites on him,
GoFundMe.
GoFundMe for him. But
Right.
you can check that out.
Mhm.
Well, that's another game that's kind of on my shelf of shame. I own the game, but I haven't played it, as well as maybe another one. But all of these games, I think Mark would agree, we're ready to play those at any time, right? We certainly have favorites. So I kind of came up with the top 10.
Well,
But
I am, but he's
yeah,
got a job.
yeah, I've got a job, exactly. So my gaming is a little more limited. So I got to be a little choosy. The next game on my list, number 9, for those of you at home counting, is a Mark Herman title, a recent release, or recent to me anyway, Rebel Fury.
Right, and we do like Mark Herman.
Oh yeah,
Games, right,
big fan.
right.
Rebel Fury is part of a series of Civil War games that Mark's working on. I think the next one is Army of the Potomac or some such title. I think it's on the P500 at GMT, which produced this game as well. And I thought Rebel Fury, and Mark and I have played it. We played the Chancellorsville scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And then at San Diego HistCon, I played another gentleman from Minnesota. I forget his name off the top of my head. We played another scenario that was pretty good as well. But I think it's an enhancement of his Gettysburg game,
Yes.
which is also available online. And
Steam.
I have the
Steam.
hard
Yep.
copy. That it
Mm-hmm.
was originally a C3I game.
Right.
And Battle of Gettysburg is my all-time favorite battle. It's what sparked my love of history when my father and mother took my three younger brothers and I to the Gettysburg and got to walk the battlefield. And I kind of want to go back and play the Gettysburg game using some of the rules from Rebel Fury that
Mm.
dealt with divisions and uh, anyway, a lot of fun. But Rebel Fury is a lot of fun. I think there's 4 different maps or 4 different scenarios,
Right.
and it's going to be followed by Army of the Potomac. My observation there, very difficult on the attack, which I think is historical. A lot of casualties, but I think Mark and I found, and I found this with my other opponent, even when you had some overwhelming odds, the luck could go against you with kind of a unique battle resolution. But it was fun, and it was predictable, but it was definitely difficult on the attack. Any
Yeah.
comments you had about that game?
Very. I mean, it shares a lot with the Gettysburg roots, and then it's just built on that with more complexity in the command structure and artillery and the leaders. But it's still the basic. You've got um, unlimited movement until you get locked in. Or one player passes, and then there's a dice roll, and then you've got X moves left. It's a very interesting mechanic. If people keep moving, then the turns will go on and on and on and on and on. But eventually you get all your troops into position, and if you're the defender, then you want to say, okay, pass, and then you want to the timing of when you say pass is critical. Maybe you don't want to, you're not completely ready as a defender and have all your troops around, but you don't want to give the attacker the opportunity to move more troops up. So there's decisions there. The fighting is very bloody. It's interesting. The units will get, I think the term is when removed from the
Shattered?
map, blown.
Oh, blown. Yeah,
Removed.
shattered or blown.
Right, they're removed from the map and they come back in 2 turns. Now, if you're within 2 turns of the end of the game, they don't come back, and they score a lot of victory points. So
Yeah.
it's a relatively low victory point scoring game. So you can lose troops and then have them come back, lose troops, have them come back. But at the end of the game, the last 2 turns is when all the major victory points are scored.
I would agree. And in fact, I recall you wanted to do a big attack and force a lot of the defense off the map because in the later turns, only 2 units could come back.
Right,
The third, fourth would be
that's
casualties and
true.
score
Yeah,
VPs.
yeah,
So, it didn't make any sense to kind of nibble around and just, knock 1 or 2 units off the map because they would just come back and you wouldn't get any
right,
VPs.
right.
That was kind of an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, yeah. So once you've got 2 casualties, then you're encouraged to get more because then I think it's the attacker's pick which
Hmm.
ones come back. So obviously you don't bring the Iron Brigade back. You bring back some lesser unit. So it's got some interesting ideas in it, and it plays sort of chess like as well.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And I did like the movement mechanic that you
right.
described. It was kind of a race for the best terrain,
Hmm.
so to speak.
Very nice looking maps too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
High quality
yeah.
GMT typical game.
Right. Well, told you we like Mark Herman because here's another one. Washington's War, the American Revolution. So this is like essentially Go played on the in the 13 colonies. Uh, so again, it's very asymmetric with it's card driven, but the British um, are much more limited in what they can do in terms of placing their political control markers. It is a war game, but you win by getting political control of the colonies, and so you could um, win this game without fighting too much. because fighting's nice, but you really want to area control is how you win this game. Um, so again, very historic. You've got Washington and then or Cornwallis, and it's I'd say again on another reason why I played it a lot. It's on Rally the Troops,
Oh, okay.
so
Now,
that's why this one is played a lot
let me
because it's
ask you a
just so much more
question.
convenient to play on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I agree. I'm looking for more games on Rally the Troops and BGA. But if you were given a choice of playing live, which is both of our preference,
Hmm.
and it was an American Revolution game, would you pick this game, which is on my shelf of shame, or Liberty or Death by Harold Buchanan?
What are the chances of Harold watching this podcast?
I don't know. I've got his email. I might let him know. Hey, I gave you a plug for
Well,
San Diego
this is a
HistCon.
two-player game, so it's not really a four. If there are four of us, obviously we'd choose Liberty or Death. There we go. I'll get
Yes.
out of it that way.
All right.
Two
I'll let you
player,
slip away.
I have played Liberty or Death. That's another fantastic looking map, coin game. So if you have to like coin games, but I actually played against Harold at one of the original
Oh, that's
SG
right.
HistCons when he was teaching the game. I won, as I think the British, of course, and I got a mug as a result of that. That was many years ago, but
Yes.
so I have actually played it. Um,
He's upgraded his prizes for winning his tournaments. You got a
I
mug.
got a
I got a
mug.
game.
Yeah, what the heck? Yeah. I have heard that the French might be a bit boring for the French.
Well, my introduction to coin in general and Liberty or
In
Death
Liberty or Death,
was
I mean.
with Liberty or Death, and I was assigned the French
Hmm.
because I was just learning. So I
Well,
got to
okay,
watch, and it was
right,
fun. It was
right,
right here at this gaming
because
table that I got.
they don't have so much to do in the
They
first few
don't, but it
turns.
was fun.
Right,
I enjoyed it. I
right.
would like to play that game again, ideally with four players.
Hmm.
And that's nice. In San Diego, we've got a gaming group that kind of got knocked down with COVID, like many of you out there. But I think it's starting to resuscitate.
Hmm.
If we can just find places reliably to go play that aren't going to charge us,
Right.
that's the key.
I would say it's a Mark Herman game. The rules in here are very tight. I would say there's
Nice,
very few questions on the rules on this one.
excellent.
Good job, Mark.
All right, so back over to me. This would be number 8. I am always on the lookout for a good 3-player game because 2 of my 3 sons really enjoy wargaming. They're both kind of competitive, and they're much smarter than their father, that's for sure. So this is Keep 'em Rolling, Race to the Rhine, which is a remake of a game with kind of a similar title. The remake,
Well, it's a new game, really,
well,
isn't it?
yeah, it's a new game, but
Yeah.
it was based on the original
Second in a
game.
series, maybe.
The original game was called Keep 'em Roll. Oh, wait, no,
Race to the Rhine.
Race to the Rhine.
Right.
There we go. So they maintained Race to the Rhine on the box, but this is Keep 'em Rolling. The main difference was they added a 4th player option
Hmm.
with another board attached to it. But it's a really cool game. It's kind of card driven. I would say
Is
it's
it the
fair.
same?
We've played.
Is it the same theater then?
Yeah, same
Oh,
theater.
okay.
You've got the Allies
Oh,
starting
I didn't
off
realize
there.
that. I thought they might have moved it to.
No, no, all exactly the same theater.
Okay,
I forget
okay,
exactly where you start, but you're literally racing to the Rhine.
right. So the
And it's kind of through movement. It's hard to describe because it was a unique game as far as I
so they
was
added a
concerned.
fourth general then, did they?
They added a 4th general
Who's
with
that?
a 4th section of the map. So if you only got 3 players, you don't even add that map section to the
Hmm.
south part of the board.
Okay.
So, and I believe it has a solo option.
Okay. Yes. Well, the
Um,
original did for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so this
Yeah.
one does
One
as
to
well.
4 players. Right. There you go.
So this was a lot of fun. You can kind of see the map there on the back. It's a very beautiful map and a lot of choices to make.
Oh, you add that thing on the right for the
Yes,
4th player. That's south of France
exactly.
invasion.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Got it.
And so, every turn you have to decide, are you going to load up your trucks
Hmm.
with bullets, supplies,
Fuel.
and fuel?
Mhm.
Exactly. And so it's a mix, and you're trying to get as far out as you can, as quickly as you can, before the German defenses stiffen. So
And
it's a really nice design. It's published by Phalanx Gaming. Uh, I can't even pronounce the names of the designers. I wrote them down here. Wait a minute. I'll give it a shot. I'll butcher it.
okay,
My
should be
apologies.
funny.
Yves Roig and Valentine Crispin. The original was Waldeck Uminimi and Yarrow Andestus.
Okay, sorry about
Sorry about that. No
that.
disrespect intended, because it's a great game.
And the German player is a card deck.
Yes.
The ally, the four players are the four or allied generals competing as much against themselves for the glory of being the first across the
Yeah.
grind.
Yeah. Nice, tight little game. It's playable in probably 2.5, 3 hours. Not your first time, but the second time.
All right. If you're looking for a game which plays more than four, then this is the one you want. Struggle of Empires, which this is the older box, Martin Wallace design. They have significantly upgraded the packaging on this box and a new version. But to be honest, everything looks nicer, but the gameplay is about the same, and so it's up to seven players, and kind of a sandbox. Yes, you do have like the Russians, the British, the French, the Germans, but really, they all have the same capabilities, just different start areas on the map, and you build up your there's a bit of like a technology building. So you can buy cards to give you special powers or more offense or more defense or pop more units and or things cost less. And you can and then you just very simple mechanics in terms of combat and movement. And then when you move over the line to get to the new world, roll a dice. Sometimes you make it, sometimes you don't, sometimes you sink. So there is all that. So there's some in combat. There's some dice rolling too. So some luck in there. But all in all, very enjoyable game. And one of the major interesting mechanics about this is the alliance mechanism. So if you say have 5 players, you are going to have a bidding sequence where player 1 will say, "Well, I want to be allied with player 3," and then we'll bid money to make that happen. And then they'll go around, and other players will look and see whether they have any kind of feelings either way about that. Because if the lead player, for example, allies with the second player toward the end of the game, that second player, between the allies, they cannot attack each other.
Yeah.
So he's guaranteed that number 2 is not going to come after number 1. So players, that's not a good thing, because generally, you want to win the game. So the number 2 player particularly would want to not be in an alliance with the number 1 player.
There's some gamesmanship in there. And it's an easy game to learn as long as you have one player who really knows the game. And we had that when Mark invited me to play this with some other folks, and I picked it up pretty quick. And it was fun. I think we played it a couple times over the course of 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah, that was enjoyable. I like that one.
Right. Very, very good game. And Martin Wallace, I will say, a few rules things have been clarified in the new edition, but still, this one, if you can find it, is totally playable. The new one just looks so much better.
Yep. So keeping it moving along, the next game on my list, number 7, for those keeping score, is kind of an unusual game.
Yes.
Atlantic Chase. Now, some of you viewers of the banter know I was a midshipman for 4 years and a naval officer for 3, and I've always been fascinated by naval warfare, particularly the North Atlantic, the German U-boats and whatever. And this really is not that, but it sort of involves that, and it's the breakout of World War II. So the Norway invasion by both sides, ironically, all of those goings on. A very unique game. The criticism of most naval games is that you know where everybody is, but in reality, in naval warfare, that's not the case. I think Atlantic Chase is pretty well renowned for coming up with a way to simulate the unknown fog of war on the oceans, in the oceans. It was awesome. We got an opportunity. Mark and I, we went up to Hanford, California. the weekend at the warehouse last fall for GMT, and this was one of several games we took, and we got to play a learning scenario that neither one of us had really played the game, so we figured that out, and then played a second time. And we were very fortunate. In fact, I had the designer, Jerry Chase, is that
White, isn't it?
Jerry White? Thank you, Jerry White. He autographed my rule book.
Yes, if you're going to drop a name, you need to get it right.
Yeah, I do need exactly. Yeah, Jerry White signed the rule book, and then we met another gentleman whose name I completely forget, but I've got it written down, who has taught I don't know 15 or 20 people how to play Atlantic Chase. What we're hoping to do at some point this year is to get him on the Battlefield Banter and narrate as Mark and I duke it out in one of the scenarios of Atlantic Chase.
Tell us what we're doing wrong.
Tell us what we're doing wrong, which is a hallmark of the banter, obviously.
Yes.
But I picked this up on GMT's P500 and had thoroughly enjoyed the time we spent doing it. Wish I could play this one a little bit more, but a great choice if you like naval warfare, because it is very unique.
Right. The player level, you're representing sort of the Admiralty building back in London on the maps and ships being pushed around, right? And the Germans are the same back in Berlin or wherever their headquarters was based for the Navy. And very, very interesting mechanics in that you have this long line of I forget the name of that long line of blocks, which represents the longer the line is. The fleet is there, or the convoy or the task force is there somewhere along that line. So it left New York and it's going to arrive in Glasgow at some point, but you just don't know where it is. So part of your actions are, as the Germans, for example, if you're trying to intercept a convoy, is to intercept that line and try and reduce the uncertainty to a point, and then bring the convoy / fleet to battle. And so it's rule books interestingly written. It's different.
Yes.
It's well done, I think.
Well done. Easy to reference back and forth. Easy to teach yourself the game. It's all the references are there. I've never had a better experience with a rule book, frankly. I mean, it walked you through it.
Yep. Lots of pictures. Very helpful.
Yep.
Let's see. Another one for stabbing people in the back. Excuse me. I played this one.
Mark likes that, although his style is not quite. He will more make a suggestion that if you follow it, you stab yourself in the back.
So this is Successors and this is the new version of Successors. It's an old, originally GMT game. I think you might still be. I think I saw a copy, maybe secondhand at the weekend at the warehouse. But Richard Berg and Mark Simonich, and this is. If you like the Hannibal game, where it was really just Hannibal against the Romans in the Mediterranean, a two-player game, this one borrows a lot of those concepts, but different time period. Alexander the Great has died, and the successors in question are those of Alexander the Great, who are now wandering around his conquered territories, trying to carve out empires for themselves. And so lots of historical details here in the cards, beautiful artwork. You've got the royal family wandering around, which can be not captured. Well, the women can be married off, for example.
Wait, was it the royal family or was it his body in the tomb?
Well, that too. But his wife and his kids are around there, and if you capture the kid, then or not capture, you're controlling him. You've got some legitimacy, if you can if you can get the tomb all the way from wherever it starts across the map and have it buried in the right spot, you'll gain a lot of victory points that way. So and it's interesting, if you've got legitimacy, then the royal troops will fight for you. If you don't, and then you have royal troops in your entourage, for example, and someone with more legitimacy turns up for a battle, then the royal troops on your side will just sit out the battle. So it's got that. And you've got the stabbing in the back nature is the event cards you'll have. We were playing some game when this person was was very close to getting the body all the way back, but he just passed by all the way back to bury it at the correct destination and maximize his points. So he brought it all the way across the map, and then he was in some. He's adjacent to some opponent general who then played a card. So thank you very much. I'll take the body from here. Grabbed the body and then went and buried it. And so the first player done all the hard work of dragging the body all the way across the world, the known world, only to have it seized and buried by someone else at the last minute.
That sounds like a stab in the back.
Lots of fun. Great looking game.
That's another one by Phalanx.
Yes, it is. Right.
All right. Next up for my side, don't have the box, but I have the rule book, the cover.
It's over there.
Oh yeah, I just didn't grab it. This is another John Butterfield, Battle of the Bulge. Now this is an interesting game because there is a Steam version of the game, which Mark and I played extensively. Not a very colorful presentation. The Vassal module, Mark and I prefer because it's a beautiful map. Nice components. It's high quality type stuff from Compass Games. And in fact, I think we played one back and forth. Took us a while on Dropbox that Mark won as the Germans, of course. And we'd played it before, and he blew me off the map. I'm getting better at this game, I might add. But would you call it player control game? I'm not sure, but
area control
would probably be a better description.
Yeah.
But it's kind of unique in that each side has a certain number of pieces, and you move one piece at a time.
Well, you activate one region at a time.
Yes, right. There you go. One region. You have one piece there, two pieces, or maybe three, and they can go off and do different things. But a lot of fun, and for viewers or subscribers of the banter, we just started a live playthrough where we're commenting on what we're doing, which is kind of what the Battlefield banter is known for. But a fun game, very easy. I've taught it to my sons, and obviously a popular topic. I mean, there's probably more games on Battle of the Bulge than any other wargaming topic in the industry.
Gettysburg, maybe?
Must be. Gettysburg or Waterloo. Those are probably the top three. But a lot of fun. We did talk to John Butterfield, and this is called the World War II Commander Volume 1. Volume 2, he said, was done, and that he just needs people to call Compass Games and say, hey, what are you doing?
That's Volume 2 is Arnhem.
Arnhem, Operation Market Garden, which, A Bridge Too Far is one of my favorite World War II movies, and one of the first ones I ever watched. So I have a soft spot for Operation Market Garden. But Battle of the Bulge, if you're at all interested in the Bulge, a great game. I thought it kind of struck that balance between easy to play and everybody's got a shot at winning. A little bit of a dice chucker, I think, in terms of how they resolve combat. But, you throw dice enough, it all evens out. So a lot of fun.
Yeah, lots of ways to win. Area control, capturing VP locations like Bastogne. The Germans score victory points and then lose them. So it's on a track. And then as time goes on, they have to have their victory points. If they exceed a certain limit, they win. If they're below a lower limit, then the US wins. And this window is a sliding window that changes and moves as the game progresses. So the mechanic is that the Germans they might not win the battle, but they can still win the game because they'll rush forward and maybe get across the Meuse, maybe even get a unit off the map or two. But then the Allied strength of the Allies will usually be the case that they'll push them back. But it's not over for the Germans at that point.
Absolutely, and that's what happened in our most recent game. Mark didn't get across the Meuse, but he pushed far enough out that even as I kind of did my counterstroke and I cut some of his units off, he was able to hang on enough, and I got some bad die rolls as well. But then he won. He won rather convincingly. So anyway, as my son Zachary reminds me, it's a poor craftsman that blames his tools. So
very wise son.
He is. It's a poor wargamer that blames the die, which I'm not doing. But anyway, so it was a lot of fun.
So the mechanic there is very much like another favorite game I don't think we've played it this year though. No Retreat.
No Retreat.
The Russian front, where the Germans are going to do very well initially, and reach a high watermark. And if they don't do an auto win, then the Russians are going to push back, and so at that point the Germans could still win by just not collapsing. So
Yeah.
it's a very nice.
Yeah, and that's a favorite topic of mine. In fact, my Shelf of Shame game is the GMT Russian Campaign, which was originally an Avalon Hill title. And none of my games are still in shrink wrap. I can't wait when a game shows up. I open them up and I look at the rule books and the designer notes. And so anyway, but it's never been played. So
I'm just
on to
looking
the
over.
next
I
one.
got No Retreat. I think the French one.
Have you ever played that?
Still in shrink from a GMT sale of 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, that's a common refrain for most wargamers, right? I mean, I watch other YouTube channels. That's where we got the inspiration for this, and I'm amazed at some of these guys and women, I suppose, that have 400 or 500 games. I'm like, that's a lot of investment at
Mhm.
50, $75 a
Right,
pop. That's a
right,
lot of
right.
games that because there's no way you can have played 500 games.
No, to play a game, any of the games we're talking about, really this complexity to master them, you've got to play them, 20, 30
Five,
times.
I was going to say at least 5 to 6 times.
Oh, well, yeah.
I mean, yeah. Anyway,
So yeah, it's interesting, but part of the fun is like looking at them
it's
on the
kind of
shelf.
like collecting. You're kind of collecting games. Although we haven't put shelfies up yet. I think we
I
can
don't do
make a
shelfies.
commitment. We will never do a shelfie.
All right, here's another one. Capstone Games, Fire and Stone, The Siege of Vienna, 1683. So this is a war game. It's got hexes, and you can see there, it's got about 10 of them on the map. They're very big hexes. You see, they're
Wow, those are
super big
big.
hexes, and very a tactile game. Lots of wooden pieces. You've got the artillery. You've got the defensive.
How'd
Um,
you find this game? I'm curious.
how did I find this game? I don't know how I found this game.
I mean,
How?
how'd you get introduced to this? I've never heard of the company.
Oh,
I know I've been to Vienna,
yeah.
but I have
No,
no
I
knowledge
don't
of.
know how I heard about this game, but it's been on my list for a while, and then I just like, the way it is when you're ordering something on Amazon, and you're like, oh, I save the shipping, and then it's just, and there it
It
is.
was an
Yeah,
add-on. So,
yes,
okay,
yeah.
interesting.
But two-player game, quite simple rules, um, card-based again in well, card assisted, I think, and you've got a limit. The Ottoman army has reached Vienna, and it's done a dummy. It's dummied the Austrians, and it's slipped by them, and it's reached the gates of Vienna, and it wants to storm Vienna and then carry off some loot with no real hope or intention of staying there long term. But and then the Habsburg armies have turned around, and they're racing to try and relieve the siege. So it's a race game where, if you like, where the Ottomans have to breach the defenses quickly, and so you got 6 or 7 turns, and if they're not done by those turn they, by the end of those 6 or 7 turns, then they've lost the game. But so they do have overwhelming strength, but they've got limited time to achieve their objectives. And the Habsburg, they got cannons, lots of cannons. So there's lots of. This is another dice chucker, and and again, very good quality map, nice artwork. Plays quickly, so if the dice don't go your way, you can just flip the whole thing around and play it again the other way. So it's not as small as 13 days or 300, but still quite compact and a different subject.
Yeah,
And so that's what interested me. It's a little bit out of the ordinary, and I'd recommend it.
you've
Good fun.
convinced me. That's one
Yeah,
I'll
no,
try.
it looks very good, and we'll put up a a banter article about this one.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Next, what do we got here? Oh, yes. Yes, this is a favorite one. Um, Great War Commander, published by Hexasim, but I think it's now distributed by GMT, I
Yes,
believe.
and Hexasim still.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh, and Hexasim
we got our copies direct from France, La Belfast.
from Hexasim.
Yes, we
Yeah.
did.
And I've got this and 2 of the expansions. Those are still in shrink, at least Doug Lewis shrink. But I played this a couple times
Two
with Mark.
expansions?
What?
2 expansions?
Yeah,
There's the
there's 2
British.
expansions, and then there's a tank expansion as well.
Okay.
I believe there's 2 expansions.
Okay.
Yeah, because I have a second box
Mm-hmm.
and then a sleeved, kind of like a Combat Commander expansion.
Oh, right. I think you're right.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes,
So
yes.
2 of them. And a lot of fun. I mean, it's obviously based on Combat Commander Europe, which Mark and I are big fans of. Tactical World War One combat. I remember when one of the scenarios we played, Lieutenant Rommel made an appearance there in World War One, but a lot of fun. Um, you know, no die rolling because all of the die rolls are captured on cards, which I really like because it's kind of like playing blackjack, right? When you roll 2 6-sided dice, 7 is statistically most often going to come up. So by having both in Combat Commander and Great War Commander all of the die rolls on cards, you kind of know once you've had a couple higher die rolls come up, you're probably due for a run of lower die rolls, which is statistical. It's not actually chucking die where you could roll an 11 10 times in a row. I mean, that's plausible. I mean, it could happen. It probably won't, but it could. And that's kind of what I like about Combat Commander and Great War Commander.
The maps
Um,
are different, right? Very different from Combat Commander.
oh yeah, very different. As you might imagine, a lot of obstacles. And I haven't played Great
I
War.
mean the artwork.
Oh, the artwork,
Right.
beautiful artwork.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to play more of this. I would love to see a ladder for Great War Commander, much like the very successful Combat Commander.
When you retire.
When I retire, maybe that'll be one of my projects.
You heard it here first. That's
heard it here first.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. Any comments that you have about Great War Commander?
Yeah, it's I think different enough to, if you have Combat Commander, this still has could have a place in your collection. The artillery is very different. The barrages, it's got tanks, of course, and it's got the additional strategy cards which you can play either for the event or to add one to your dice roll. But then once they're done, they're done. And so that's a little bit different to Combat Commander. But basically it is, if you've played Combat Commander, a lot of it will be familiar to you. I think the events, some of them are stronger, like there are some like ambush events and so forth, which can, if you've got units within 2 hexes of something else, then something bad happens to them. But it's a lot of fun, and there is I just noticed there's a new expansion of those strategy cards has been published by
I did
Hexasim.
see that recently. Right.
Yeah. I think I haven't. We've had this for quite a while now. It's been out of print for a long time, and it was commanding really high prices. And then there was a new print run, and so Doug and I both got the game, but I feel that I'm going to hold off on buying the that expansion until I've played this one a bit more.
Yeah, and that's kind of my thing coming in. As we started the banter, I'm much more committed to playing the games I have and selectively buying new games. I just think that's smart, but I tend to not want to sell any of my games, and I've got a big stack of games that some of the old Avalon Hill titles that I repurchased during the pandemic, and I want to get on the table now that I actually have opponents. When I was growing up, I never had any opponents other than for Wooden Ships and Iron Men and Speed Circuit, which was the Grand Prix of today. So,
anyway. How many do we have left? Should I get
that was my number 5. So I've got 4 games left.
Right, okay, all right. Well,
this just 4.
This one's one I played last year rather. This War Without an Enemy. If you played any of the Columbia Block War games, then this will be very familiar to you. It's the Civil War of the English.
He's a Brit, by the way, if you hadn't noticed.
The English Civil War, and actually, it's news to me. The first English Civil War. I didn't realize there were actually.
Oh, there were
3.
2? Oh, 3?
3 in this area, but 1642, 1646. This is the one, Cromwell. You've probably seen the movie, and King Charles I. and all that. And so the new model army is in there, features in there, but it's the Royalists, the Cavaliers versus the Roundheads, and really it's an upgrade from the Columbia Games heavy cardstock maps to a full mounted map, and then wooden blocks, lots of them, and then it's got I would say it's got a lot more chrome added, so it's a little bit heavier than the standard Julius Caesar, Richard III, Hammer of the Scots type Columbia games. You've got your pieces there, cavalry, instead of just armies, you've got cavalry, infantry, artillery, which all have different effects on a field battle or in a siege. And your leaders, the leaders, which are, they don't have any leaders special effects in the Columbia games, but they can determine, the leaders are regional. So if you've got a leader for the Midlands of England, he cannot, he can lead his troops. The troops will be regional. They cannot leave the Midlands unless they have this leader, and the regional leader can lead them off. But at the end of the year, he will have to return unless. But there's one global leader who can control troops and move them all over the country. So there's this whole new mechanic about leaders. You need to be a little bit careful about having the right leader with the right mix of troops. Otherwise, at the end of the year, they have to all shoot back to their home territories if they can. And lots more. It's card driven in a similar way to the Columbia Games ones, but there are events on every card as well. So it's a little bit more complex than Hammer or Julius Caesar, but very good build quality. Nuts War Games, Nuts, who also did, I think, 300, just the one I started off with. That's correct. They produce very high quality games, and this is another one.
Yeah,
very good looking game.
Interesting.
It's right there, actually. That's it on the table.
Oh, on the table. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. All right. So my number, that was your number 5 game.
Was it? Okay.
I think so.
All right.
So my number 4 game, a classic in the industry, Ted Racer, GMT, Paths of Glory. Right. Great game. Grand strategy, World War One. I'd say it's fair to say card-based game, a lot of combat. And it creates to me a strategic dilemma every single turn, in that you only have a hand of 7 or 8 cards. Each card contains an event, which often is very valuable for your side, as well as the opportunity to use the value of the card for an operational deal, or use the card to replenish your troops, because you're always losing troops in combat. No matter how strong your attack is, you almost always come away from, at least it's been my experience, in a combat with some losses that you're trying to replace.
Attrition of World War One.
Attrition of World War One. It's very realistic that way. And it's just constantly you have bad choices. You have to keep your units in supply. Mark and I played this game, I don't know, 4 or 5 times. In fact, the very first time we played it, he kept blowing me up, and there was no way I was going to recover. So we'd say, okay, I concede. Let's just start one turn back.
The beauty of Vassal, easy to do that.
Easy to do that. So apparently,
and then I'd beat him again.
And then he'd beat me again. So, and what's ironic is, and right now on the banter, we've got a game going.
How is that game going?
Well, I haven't checked the last turn, but apparently I left a hole in my line. Yeah. And his troops poured through. Right. So
one thing you don't want to do in this game is have your troops out of supply, because if they're out of supply, then they cannot move and cannot fight. And if they're out of supply at the end of the 3-month
round,
they are just eliminated.
They're eliminated, right. And of course, I left a hole in my lines in like the 5th action round or something. There's only 6 in a turn. So I was on the road, and Mark texted me, "Oh, disaster on the Eastern Front." So I haven't even opened the turn yet. I'm trying to. I'll probably do that after this taping.
Yeah, you should tune in to the banter we'll be posting that episode shortly.
Yes. But a great game. It's a great game. There's a player's guide that I picked up on Amazon during the pandemic. that's actually pretty useful and still relevant. The game itself is probably 15, 20 years old.
Right, this is the anniversary edition of some kind, isn't it?
Yeah, now this is
25th?
yours. It's a deluxe edition,
Mm-hmm.
probably a hard copy map.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's always so many things you want to do, and you just don't have the resources to do them all. Between the Western Front, the Eastern Front, the Italians once they enter the war, and then the Mediterranean front around Turkey. There's just too much stuff to do.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what makes a game so great. Interestingly enough, never once have the Americans come into the game.
In the 6 or 7 games that we've played, and you've
Yeah.
played more against other opponents.
Yeah, and I've
Right,
played
right,
with a couple other guys that I met on the Combat
Right,
Commander
right.
ladder.
Yeah, that's because I beat Doug too quickly, I think.
Now, what's ironic about that, I'm always ready to play Mark in any game he's willing to teach me, or games we've already played, because I always get better. And so then when I play other people, I'm better than I would have been otherwise. I know that to be true. So for any of you longtime viewers that think I'm just a masochist and I like to play these games, I do have an ulterior purpose. So Paths of Glory was number 4 on my list.
Right. To get the Americans in that game, the mechanic is the Russians need to collapse, and because that forces things along various tracks, and then the Americans are more. I believe.
I
that's
think
the
you're
mechanic,
right.
but we've never seen it.
We've never got to that point. And I've had in other games with Doug Riley, a friend of mine up in the Bay Area. One of us, I forget who, the Russians did collapse, or they were at the point where
Tsar
they were
takes
backed
command and all
all the
that,
way,
right.
but the Americans still didn't come in
Oh,
because
dear.
we didn't get the right card play, or I
Mhm.
think he conceded before we
Mm.
got that deep in the war. So
Mhm.
I almost think at some point we need to pick one of these scenarios where you start in like 1917,
Mm.
just to get the American counters on the
Right.
board. I want to see what they look like.
Right.
So, and we should also schedule a Saturday and actually play it over the table here.
Right.
That might be fun.
So I was stretching my mind back, and I think I did play this one in 2024 against James, but I'm not quite sure. I think I'm saying I played it in 2024. So
That's fair.
prove me wrong. So Imperial Struggle, the same designers, Anand Gupta and Jason Matthews, and we also ran into Anand.
Yes, we did.
Not to drop names, but at the weekend at the warehouse.
And you got his name right.
Thank you. Imperial Struggle. So it was a long time on P500. I was really looking forward to this game. I had many years of development, I think, and because I really liked and like Imperial Struggle. Sorry, Twilight Struggle.
Twilight Struggle.
This is Imperial Struggle. I liked, and so I was thinking, however, nothing like the other game. Very little in common, I would say. Very. There's a lot going on. One of the the high barriers to entry in this game is there's a lot going on turn 1 that you've got to get right to sort of stay in the game, I think. But it's got a lot of
So are
mechanics,
you
but
saying
simple
it's not a
mechanics.
very forgiving game?
I think you could be behind the 8 ball if you don't do well early on. So you've got to you've got to be aware that there's a lot to do, because it's got these 3 war phases, and one kicks off right after the first turn of play of cards. So you've got to get yourself in position to do well in that war phase on that very first turn. So there's so much going on there. But beautiful. Another game which looks really nice on the table. I'm not sure if you can see the map there. Looks really pretty. It covers Europe, of course, the Americas, Caribbean, and India. I think are the main. Did I miss any there? Europe, North America. Okay, yeah, that's the 4 main theaters, which really the British are vying with the French for ultimate control. And then, of course, the American Revolution comes in when everything changes in North America. It's very well modeled. Card driven again, but the cards they have an event, bonus events. They have certain little attributes, whether they're going to be economic or diplomatic or military. So I think it's there's a lot to take in to play this game well. And
well, here's my question: when you finally convince me to sit down and play this game, Which side?
Have we played?
No, we've never played that
Okay.
game. I admired that game. You've
Hmm.
told me about it,
Hmm.
and it looks like one I would enjoy. I kind of
Right.
like that period of history, but
Yeah.
um, which side, who gets what side?
I've done badly as both on both sides. One particular game I was actually doing. It's got this push pull victory point track, and if you get over 20, I think it is, then you auto win. And I was at 19 or 20, and very close to the whole game. And then I misremembered one rule right at the end, and my opponent he pulled it all the way back to 0,
Oh
and then
wow!
because of some tiebreak rule, he won the game.
Oh,
So I think I'd have to have a look on the geek and see which one's more. But I don't think I'm a good enough player, so I play equal. I play both sides equally
oh,
badly. So I
okay.
think
Well,
you'll be
that's
fine.
in
You'll be
spirit
fine.
with the banter.
Right. But you know what? I do like the theme, the cards, the artwork's really good. The historical events they allude to, most of the War of Jenkins' Ear, for example, is one that comes to mind. Lots of like you read, they go, oh, yeah, that's interesting. I should find out more about that event. So, which is part of the reason I play these historical games. But so all in all, a fun experience. And it says here complexity 4. I'm not sure I agree with that,
Hmm.
but a
On a
great
scale
game.
of 1 to 10.
Yes, it
Okay.
does. Yeah.
And GMT's usually pretty good with their ratings on that. At least
Right.
I've found.
Right.
So yeah, that's a game that I kind of want. So here's number 3 on my list. And in fact, I alluded to this earlier in this video. It's how Mark and I met. Command and Colors Napoleonics.
This would be on my list too.
Oh,
Some
okay.
of our games are shared.
Yes, some of the
Yeah.
games are definitely shared, but it's how I met Mark. It was the second game in the Command and Colors series that it might have been the third game. I think in a local game store, I picked up Command and Colors Ancients, which is
Hmm.
fun,
Hmm.
very bloody. But this is probably well, it is clearly, it's my favorite Command and Colors game. Um,
Better than Memoir 44.
Better than Memoir 44. I think in large part because of one aspect of this game.
Yes.
It's the fact as the battle goes back and forth and you whittle down your
Oh.
opponents, their return fire is also weakened. And that is not the case in any other Command and Colors game, which I find annoying in that you get,
Oh, I don't know about that. That's a bold statement. That might be the case in the Japanese
well,
ones.
I've
I
not
think
played
I
that one.
know.
Okay, I should have
Okay.
said the ones that I've played. I've played Ancients, I've played the Civil War Battle Cry, Napoleonics, Memoir, and the American Revolution one, which I don't have anything to say about. But this, I own all the expansions. I'm a completist. If I really like a game, I want to get all the expansions, and I track. I've got this sophisticated spreadsheet where I'm trying to play both sides every scenario. I've completed this all the way. So there's a lot of fun ones here. I think in one of our first banter episodes was you and I playing a scenario
Yes.
from Napoleonics. It's
Hmm.
just a great game.
Hmm.
It's
Very
one
quick.
very quick. Mark
Hmm.
and I can play it on Dropbox. The
Hmm.
rules are good enough that it lends itself to you go, I go, with very few points of interruption, like opportunity fire or
Hmm.
whatever. But they're easily resolved if you play this game on Dropbox, which I would highly recommend. That's a great way to kind of scratch the wargaming itch if you've got maybe 15 minutes, half an hour. Is work on a couple of your games that you're playing. But as all Command and Colors games, it's got the 3 flanks. You
Breaks
have
up the
cards.
workday.
Pardon me? Yeah,
Breaks
breaks
up the
up the
workday.
workday.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Little
yeah.
little like
Do you recall that?
creative thing over here, and you come back all re-energized and
Re-energized. They've also got one of the expansions with tactics cards that are a lot of
yes,
fun. And
marshals and tacticians or
yeah,
something
you've
like
got the
that.
game over
Yes.
there. And then they've got epic scale, which widens and deepens the map, which is even more fun.
Mm.
So a lot of variety in here. They've even got a commandandcolors.net Napoleonics website. There's an international tournament every year or so. which I've done off and on the last 5 years. Kind of fun. You always meet interesting people.
They're very
Not
interesting.
nearly the interest in Napoleonics as in memoir, right?
Mhm.
Just because not that many Americans are even interested in Napoleon and all of the stuff that went on. I think that's a
Yeah.
fair statement.
I think I have the base game, and I have and then the next the best expansion is the
The
Masters
Marshals,
and
yeah,
Tacticians, which if that's the correct name, it's something like
it
that.
is something like
But
that.
it expands the role of the leaders um, in the game and gives you more events, and it really is the one which adds a lot to the game. And the reason I like this one, I think, and don't like uh, memoir is I think one of the things anyway is the battle back, which you don't have in memoir.
Right. Oh, that is another fundamental difference. Good
Right.
call.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's when you first play it, I think there is some depth to it. It's not just a dice chucker, and I
Hmm.
think the better player, well, obviously, if you're just rolling terribly all day, you're going to lose. But the better player usually will win out in
I
this.
would agree with that.
Mhm.
That's why my kids normally beat me in
Yeah.
this. They're better players than I am. But and I'm glad you brought up the battle back because quite often in Command and Colors, you want to fight to the bitter end with some of your weakened units. But in Napoleonics, you really got it's more nuanced because if you initiate a battle on your turn because you have the card and you got the units in that flank and there's only two strength, he might pull an ambush card, or on the battle back, he might kill you, which in Command of Colors is tough because you want to take advantage of every shot. Generally speaking, if the die rolls equal out and the card distribution equals out, the person who has more shots would theoretically win. But with the battle back mechanic, it kind of changes that, and the weakening fire mechanic.
Mhm.
So much more subtle game. I
Right,
I,
right.
I think Command and Colors Napoleonic strikes that balance between easy to play yet a lot of strategy and
Hmm.
nuance. It knocks it out of the park.
Right.
Love this game.
So I have three left. Is that right?
Yeah, that was my number three.
All right. Well, it's over there. I won't go and get it. Twilight Struggle. Then, if I'm going to put a top three, that's probably my most played game because I'm continually playing that on Steam on the iPad. Twilight Struggle by the same designers, Anand and
It's right
Jason.
there.
It's right here. Look at that. I
I
did
brought it
get
out.
yes. Thank you. Twilight Struggle. Look at that. Twilight Struggle, Cold War 1945 to 89. So of course I will remember um, some of the issues, some of the events from like I don't know the 70s to 89. Margaret Thatcher, all that, and a lot of events will resonate and will still be in my memory. So that there is that. If you haven't played this, you definitely need to try it on the low risk way instead of investing on the game. You can get it on the
Steam.
iPad,
Yeah.
yes, for $10 or so, and you'll play the AI, which is okay, but you should. But eventually you'll grow out of that. And there's a whole raft of opponents. But really an excellent game. It used to be. It was the top 10 game I think on
It
Board Game
was
Geek for a long time,
for
and
like 10 years.
it was a war game to be honest. We're really a Euro game centric site. It's really quite incredible. But he's got the early war, mid war, late war. You've got the Russians are stronger in the early and mid, and then the Americans tend to, so they say, get stronger in the late war. Um, really fun game again, and this one so much simpler than Imperial Struggle, with just very simple mechanics, and they've got the angst of when you play a card, if it has your opponent's event on it, then that event is going to trigger, and so you mitigate that by sending a card to the space race, and then it just gets discarded, but may well come back in a later when a deck gets reshuffled. At least it's out of your hand for that turn. But you often you'll get like a terrible hand of all your opponent's events. Well, then you have to hope that your opponent also has a terrible hand of all your events. So you never know what's going to happen. And so a lot of tension in the game. Great design, and I think there's an anniversary edition or something like that. And
Yeah,
GMT,
they did release
there's
that.
there's a boxed edition of for a wooden box, and you
Yeah.
can get upgrades. I haven't got any of that, this is but GMT. I'm willing to evaluate any of that if you want to send me a set. But really good game, and again, it was nice meeting the designer at GMT.
Yeah, and it is a great game. I am proud to say I've played it on Steam, and Mark and I played it a couple times here on his in his game room. I've never won, never. I just I it doesn't.
That's why I like playing, Doug.
Yeah, I'll always play again. I got it on my iPad. I had it on my laptop, and which annoyingly on Steam I had to pay twice. Right, each device
Yes,
you got to pay again.
it's like
Not good for
yes,
you, Steam. That's
right.
anyway.
Boo, yes.
But yeah, boo. But it was fun, and of course the hard copy game, great components. There's a lot of information on the geek on this
Hmm.
game. All time popular game.
Yeah.
I
My board game copy that came with a coffee stain. Yeah, it did.
well, I find
That's
it
in the artwork. It's supposed to be
in the artwork, but it doesn't play to my strength. I'm terrible at memorizing cards and strategies. I tell this story to my kids when we play poker, which is a pretty straightforward game. I can't even remember what hand beats what hand. So,
But you like Battle Line.
but I like Battle
That's
Line. I can figure that out. But Twilight Struggle, I can't keep up with what cards have come by
right.
and then what the because for every card there's a counter card, right? And well, like we know some folks that are excellent at it
Hmm.
because I think they have that kind of memory, whereas I'm better at evaluating a battlefield and with my study of history and ROTC and whatever,
Mm.
kind of knowing what I'm supposed to do. What now, whether I execute it or not, is another story. Whereas in Twilight Struggle, it's more about card play, I think.
Right. Right.
But which I like that. I want to
Right.
get
So
better
you
at
do you
that. Not a
know?
criticism
So
at
you
all.
know not to leave a hole in your lines then when you're.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. For every point I make, there is a counterpoint. But a fun. I would agree
Yeah,
with Mark's
I
assessment.
think
A
if
fun game.
people who play that a lot will just demolish a beginner because
Yes. Yeah.
the early war deck after a couple of turns. Well, if you don't have the scoring cards there and they haven't come up, then you know your opponent's got all three in his last hand. But there's things like that, and you can by remembering. Being aware of what's being played so far and looking at your cards, you'll know pretty much the hand of your opponent on the third. I think it's the third draw where before the mid-war deck's been shuffled into the. So there's things like if you know the card events, that's what you know what's coming, and then there's knowing how the cards play together. Like there are certain things which will um, a card play to reduce your opponent's operations points by one for the rest of the turn
Yeah.
is a very strong play. And then you can play a card where your opponent has to discard a card of above a certain number of op points in order, or he's stuck. So those two, that's a combo. You first you've depressed his op points, and then you play a card where he has to play a card with a lot of op points to get out of trouble.
Yeah.
So if you know how these cards go together, you go, ooh, I've got this.
These are painful memories he's describing for me. I mean, I was even at the point where I was playing at the same time, Mark and another friend of mine, and I was just losing and losing. I'm like, let's go again. To the point where I was like, well, I'm going to make myself a little player's aid with all of the cards. And in essence, I was going to have a paper and pencil counting cards mechanism, a
Hmm.
Doug Lewis player aid. And as I started to build it, I'm like, this is too much work. I'll just find another game to
You're
play.
making your own bot in
Yeah, I
essence.
was making my own bot, but anyway. All right, so that was that was
That's
your game.
three,
So
right?
now
Two,
now
number
we're to my
two.
number 2 game, which we don't physically have, is
Oh,
Dune
yes. Oh,
Imperium.
right, right.
Dune Imperium. Available in the hard copy game, which I really enjoy and own, as well as on Steam, which I've played extensively, certainly with my son as well as with Mark. The three of us have played. And if you like the Dune universe at all, whether you've read the Frank Herbert book or maybe more
Books.
recently seen the movies, I would say the game is fairly faithful to that. It's got all the elements, very high quality game. I forget who produced that game. And it's the one my son currently has borrowed my copy,
Ah,
so I couldn't look it up, but that's just how popular the game is. He's like,
mm,
Dad, can I borrow it? I got some friends coming over, but high quality cards, and
mhm.
it's a lot of fun, a lot of difficult choices.
Well,
There's
you,
some
you need to
combat.
give that copy to your son and buy Dune Imperium Uprising, the new version. They call it an expansion, but it's a standalone game. It's
That's
actually improved some things, and
is it okay?
it's
That's
and the
something
other
to
the other
take a
one
look at.
is still a great game. I think it's really quick. Right? It's a race to 10 points, right?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Well, once you get to 10 points, it triggers the end game, and then there'll be some extra card plays where you might have some. Aha! I get 2 more points.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of
But
fun.
mhm,
And you can kind of, stab some people in the back, either with the card play
mhm.
or in the combat mechanism. There's some
Yes,
hidden type stuff that you've got, and
right,
it's
right.
it's just a well done game, and it's pretty quick.
It is, yeah.
It's not,
Hmm.
especially once everybody knows how to play.
Hmm.
I'd say you could knock out a 4-player game in probably 3 hours.
Right, right.
It's kind of a beer and pretzels
Hmm.
feeling.
Yep, yep. Hmm.
Okay, to you for your number 2 game, favorite game of
Number
2024.
2, Fighting Formations by Chad Jensen.
May he
The
rest in peace.
yes, yes, very, very tragic loss to the gaming community a few years ago. Also, the designer, of course, of Combat Commander. But this is it's a bigger brother, so we're at the units of the Combat Commander or squad and team level. These ones are at platoon level, I want to say. I hope I'm right there. But it's got tanks, tanks and anti-tank guns, and it's not card driven. It's got this interesting um, initiative track, which you spend initiative to do various actions. So this is the Russians. This follows the Großdeutschland division fighting in Russia. So it's the Germans versus the Russians in World War II. And so the initiative track, the two sides' strengths and weaknesses are brought out by how expensive, how much initiative you have to spend to do a certain
Yeah,
action. So the Germans would be better at firing. It would cost them less initiative to fire. The Russians would be better at, I think it's assaulting, for example. I may have got those wrong, but so you spend initiative from 1 up to 10, and then once you pass the 0 point on the initiative track, then it's the other person's turn. So if you've got if the initiative track is at like +10 on your side and it costs you 2 initiative to fire, you can just keep on firing, fire, fire, fire. And if you were to throw in a move there, then the opponent could say, "Well, I'm gonna opportunity fire, but it will cost them initiative." So they have to decide whether they want to do the firing and potentially give the opponent more turns, or whether they want to just let it slide so they have the next turn. So that little
it's kind of an
monitoring
I
the
go, you go, but with some not chrome, but different options thrown
not
in.
I go, you go though.
Well, I
No,
mean,
it's
from a
just I go, I go, I go, I.
it can be that. I mean, it depends on what you select to do, but
Right.
I think that captures the initiative of battle
Hmm.
in that usually one side is going for a while and then maybe something happens and then the other side can go.
Hmm.
It allows
Right,
that kind
right.
of interplay.
And you have the leadership. There's no specific leaders in the game like Combat Commander. There are leader tokens which have this radius, and the radius of the German leaders is generally larger than the Russians. So to demonstrate to reflect their better command and control. And then a sniper, a random event would come in and potentially you either lose a leader token off the map, or overall your radius shrinks for all your leaders. So there is that. There are some special random events in here as an option you can play. I typically don't play with those, but they're fun. They're minor, but minor change to the game. But overall, very good, and it gets around that objection that some people with Combat Commander have, like, I want to fire, but I just don't have the right cards. You can
Right.
always do something. You just need to spend the initiative to do it. And so it's a question of like whether you want to do that or not. And as troops are coming towards you, do you fire and give up your next turn? So there's all these nice decisions that need to be made. And all in all, very, very fun game. I would say it's generally the scenarios are longer than Combat Commander. It's a longer game. In fact, this is the
That's the base game.
base game. There is an expansion which mitigates that to some extent in that the scenarios are a little bit shorter.
Okay.
But,
And on the drive over, actually, I was listening to another YouTube channel, Kilroy or something was here, about the U.S. 29th Infantry
right,
in
yes,
France. That's
that is
either
the
just
new.
been released or about to be. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's actually shipping now, I think.
Oh, okay.
29th Infantry Division. It's a totally new standalone game. It was always the intent for this to be a series. And this is the next one in the series, a few years after the initial launch. But I think very similar there was a ladder on the Five Formations ladder, and we did actually have early access to one of the scenarios there.
Oh, is
play
it
test
is
it.
there currently a ladder for fighting formations?
No, it's in a state of it was a very small ladder, and it's it's it may well restart, but the organizer was taking a break for a few months, so we'll see if it starts up again.
Oh, okay.
But we played a scenario so very similar to this one, but just obviously set in Europe. The 29th Infantry's exploits in Europe.
Well,
But
that reminds me, speaking of ladders, we used to have a Command and Colors Napoleonics West Coast ladder
mhm.
that Mark was running, and then as he was nearing retirement, he got busy, so he passed it to me, and I did it for a couple months, and then it just kind of fell into disrepair because I ran out of time. But that's one of my retirement goals, however far out that might be, is to resurrect that, because one of the challenges with Napoleonics is the opponents were all over the place, and so you get time differences of 10 hours or 12 hours, and it kind of became untenable, at least for me.
Right.
So that's something I love that game, and I'd love to start teaching a lot of people that. And I do think a ladder is the best way to learn games.
Yeah. So if
So
you want to join the ladder, leave a comment in here, and then you too can beat Doug.
yeah. Oh, oh my, that's a great transition. Speaking of ladders and beating Doug, I think I could say this is our favorite game,
I
right?
don't know about beating. Doug is in the top 10 in the Combat Commander ladder currently speaking. I am languishing in the top 30,
Well, that's
maybe.
why I brought it up.
Yeah.
It's one of the few places that I've outperformed Mark, at least recently, although I've been ahead of you before, but that's
Yes.
because of how the ladder's designed, right? If you lose a game, no matter where you are, you get dropped at best to the halfway point. There's 110, 120 people. So you lose
It's
a game,
long climb back up.
it's a long
Mhm.
climb back up.
Mhm.
But yeah, and Patrick, what's Patrick's last name?
Pence.
Patrick Pence has a YouTube channel where, and I've actually been on it because he was an opponent of mine a couple of years ago. Does a great job. If you like some of the stuff we fool around with and do in the banter, and you like Combat Commander, you got to check out Patrick Pence's YouTube channel. He does a tremendous job, a great way to learn the game. But yeah, Mark introduced this game to me in the summer of the pandemic in 2020, and it quickly become my favorite game. It's got numerous ways to win. It's tactical World War II combat. The Germans, the Russians, and the U.S. with lots of expansions. I can't 10 expansions, I think, between the
Something like that.
Med,
Mhm.
Combat Commander Pacific, all sorts of things.
Resistance.
Yeah,
and
the
a whole bunch of
Resistance,
battle packs.
Fall of the West, Operation Sea Lion, Paratroopers, which I think,
Tournaments.
at least when I bought my version of Combat Commander Europe, it was co-joined with Paratroopers Expansion 1. I don't know if that was a Amazon thing or
Really?
I forget where I bought it
No, I
from.
think you just clicked on the Amazon
No,
thing.
it was
Maybe.
shrink wrapped together.
Really?
It
Paratroopers
was.
expansion.
The Parachuters
Wow.
expansion was shrink wrapped with Combat Commander,
Hmm.
but I bought it in the summer of 2020. I very rarely will buy or will play a game on Vassal unless I own the game, or at least my opponent has to own the game. But it's perfect. It's got randomness. It's got the die rolls I described earlier with Great War Commander. So there's a little bit more predictability. I mean, you can get a bad die roll in a certain situation, but you know it's going to even out. You've got the unpredictability of how long the turns will be because there's a mechanic in there where, once you exhaust the deck, the turn advances, but at any time you
Time
can get
advances.
a time event, which in the basic game is triggered by boxcars, a 12, whereas in Combat Commander Pacific, it's triggered, I believe, by Snake Eyes, which is a 2, kind of different. There are objectives, some of which are known to both players, others which are secret. So you've got that uncertainty. You've got random events coming in, random snipers coming in, all sorts of stuff going on. You can sometimes earn VPs by exiting the map, although not in every scenario. The scenarios are attempted to be balanced at the start with an awarding of victory points to one side or the other. So it's I don't know. When I meet a friend who's like, I kind of want to learn wargaming, and I have an interest in World War II, I usually teach them Memoir first, and then quickly advance to Combat Commander because I think it's a better game, got a lot more strategy anyway, and you got the ladder, right? Where the ladder cycles through the base game and 11 of the expansions every single month,
Right.
and it's kind of a quick pace. Usually with Mark and I, we have time. I love playing a practice game, try and get that knocked out in the first week of the month, and then I got 3 weeks to connect with my opponent and get a game. In fact, I'm probably going to be playing this month's ladder game either probably Sunday morning, because he had a big chunk of time, as did I, where I'm working in the middle of the month, and it's a short month. So nevertheless. But what are some of the favorite things you have about this particular game?
Yeah, it's also my number one game. I think the some people don't like the unpredictability, the Hollywood nature of it. Like, but it makes a great win or lose. Is usually I think it's one scenario sticks in my mind is really not when I didn't have a good time. But even losing, you can say, well, it's a good story, and oh, maybe I should have done that. You end up thinking about it afterwards, what you could have done better. But one funny instant which sticks in my mind. I just stormed this farmhouse, and in the melee it's winner takes all. So the Germans were no longer there, and then I was near the edge of the map, so I was just going to run off the map, and I had one more move card in my hand for the next turn to score mega points. When something happens and the German gets an event, and a heavy machine gun team pops up in the building I just vacated.
Oh,
And
ow.
they wiped me out. So they were like, hiding in the basement and so you can make up all kinds of stories about how that happened. But it's a lot of fun. Um, I think it's also relatively easy to teach because what one is the rule set is Chad Jensen rules really. That particular set is really excellent, very clear. I think it's got very little, if any, errata on it.
Yeah,
And
very thorough.
if you look at the cards you've got, what you can do is literally written on the cards, and so so you can play it like when I've taught people, they'll have their cards and I'll play my cards face down, and I'll say this is a move card and go through the moves. This is a fire card, and this is a route card and so forth. So it's relatively easy to teach because if someone all the rules are, you look at the cards and it'll give you like a good indication of what you can do that turn. If it was just like another game like which wasn't card driven, like Last 100 Yards, something like that, you go like, oh, what do I do? But now you know what you're actually driven to. The cards tell you what you have
Yeah,
to do.
yeah.
And
Kind of
so,
like Command and Colors in that regard, in that
mhm,
the cards kind of help you,
right,
especially the neophyte player, because
yes,
some might say, "Oh, that's got too much going on in the game," but it kind of naturally leads you in ways that are smart. And
mhm,
and the basic mechanic of firing, the attacker gets to roll a die added to their firepower. So, stronger units do have an advantage. And the defender has a morale level. They then roll a die so that there's the uncertainty of combat reflected by the die rolls, but still things typically work out because weaker units with lower morale will tend to break more often, and heavy machine guns will tend to do better than light machine guns.
Mhm.
So there's a logic there.
Right. Well, the characteristics of different countries are represented by different decks of cards. So as well as the strength of their units, but like the British might have more fire cards with marksmanship assists to indicate like a higher degree of training at shooting at targets. The Japanese would have more advance and ambush cards, I think, for meleeing, which is
Hmm.
they're playing to their strength. The the French have that awful discard level of 1.
Yeah.
So there's a time where if you've got cards in your hand and they just don't, it's not working for you because they're all not useful for your particular situation. The Germans have that flexibility of their command structure. You can discard all of them and just draw up. The other countries have lesser discard levels, with the French at the bottom of the spectrum, uh, where they can only discard 1, and indicating that there's certain inflexibility in their command structure. So it's very well done and very clean implementation of sort of complex idea.
Well, and I think the thing that I have found over the last 5 years of restarting my hobby is the most exciting games have always been Combat Commander. I've had some exciting games with some Command of Colors, either Memoir or Napoleonics, but pound for pound, game for game, the most excitement is out of Combat Commander Europe and the expansions. It
Mhm.
just and it can always happen. Now you can also get games where it's a blowout. That will occasionally happen. My latter game last month, which I'm hoping to post on the banter, was one such example, which is why I want to post it. My opponent was fairly gracious in agreeing to that. And you'll see on the banter, we have more postings of Combat Commander system than any other game because I think we enjoy it
Mhm.
both the most. In
Mhm.
fact, I would encourage any of the viewers in the comments list your favorite games, but also list any games you would like Mark and I to maybe do a deep dive on, to have a discussion probably with the map where we set up and we explain the rules or what we really like.
Any
We'd be happy
games?
to do that.
If we don't have it, you'll have to send us the game, of course.
Any of you publishers, the same deal. You know, if you're attracted to our, what are we, 68, 69 subscribers now? But
Yes,
we haven't grown nearly as much because we really haven't worked at all on trying to grow the channel.
that's the
Um,
reason why.
yeah, that's the
Okay,
reason why.
okay.
So anyway, what any closing comments on either Combat Commander or the entire list?
No, no, I think none of the games here are bad games. I think I enjoyed playing all of them, and these are just the ones I've remembered playing in the last year. There probably are more, but we look forward to Pericles there. I know is hit and miss with some of the group. I really enjoyed it, but I know some people are like, oh, this is not for me. But I think that's a very unusual, unique game. And Successors also. You and I played Successors,
Yeah,
right?
I
The
enjoyed
three
it.
player,
Well, that
yeah,
was, I believe, the game
the
where I
learning
made the
game.
really stupid move right out of the gate
Hmm.
and kind of put me at a disadvantage. But the
Hmm.
game mechanics were fun. I
Right,
enjoyed
right.
it.
And
Yeah.
then a three-player game, and I arranged a marriage with the number two player, so he and I couldn't attack each other. And
You kind of coasted to
I
victory.
offered it, and he went for it. So it was like, oh, that's a. So I really enjoyed that particular game. But a lot to learn, and a lot going on, and it's one of these games that even if you don't win, it's like it also tells a story. But no, that's we look forward to posting more games on the banter, and who knows, maybe Doug's going to win one of these days.
Yeah, maybe so. We'll see. So, with that, I guess we'll kind of conclude our favorite games of 2024. Please take a moment, list your games, certainly subscribe, and let us know what you'd like to see more of. We're hoping sometime in the next 4 to 6 weeks to post a shelf of shame to maybe throw it out to the viewers of what other games would you like to see us play.
That we
Um,
own.
that we have, yeah, that we own, obviously. And so we figured we'd put those games that we do own and haven't played out there for all of you out there to vote on. So
Mhm. All right.
good
Well,
deal.
thanks very much for watching this far, and see you in the next video.
Go Aztecs.
Bye bye.